Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Ashtota Dasata Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Ashtota Dasata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. All glories to the Sima devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the Sima devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the Sima devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prasthaya, Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vikasa Swamini Sinoni. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, Text 6. Hiranmayaha Virat Rupa Saha Purushaha Sahasra Parivatsaran Anda Koshe Uvasa Apsu Sarva Sattva Upabrimhitaha Hiranmaya Sapurusha Hiranmaya Sapurusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Uvasapsu Andakosha Uvasapsu Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha Hiranmaya Sapurusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Uvapsapsu Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha Hiranmaya Sapurusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Uvasapsu Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha. Please repeat.
Hiranmaya Sapurusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Uvasapsu Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha
Hiranmaya Sapurusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Vapsasu Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha
Hiranmaya Sapurusha
Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Vapsasu Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha
Hiranmaya Sapurusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Vapsasu Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha
Matajis. Sapurusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Uvasapsu Sarvasattva Pabrimhitaha Hiranmaya Purusha Sahasra Parivatsaram Andakosha Uvasapsu Sarvasatvo Pabrimhitaha Hiranmayaha, the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who also assumes the Virat Rupa. Saha, he. Purushaha, incarnation of Godhead. Sahasra, 1,000. Parivatsaran, celestial years. Andakoshe, within the global universe. Uvasa, resided. Apsu, on the water. Sarvasattva, all living entities lying with him. Upabrimhitaha, so spread. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The gigantic Virat Purusha, known as Hiranmaya, lived for 1,000 celestial years on the water of the universe, and all the living entities lay with him. Purport. After the Lord entered each and every universe as the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, half of the universe was filled with water. The cosmic manifestation of the planetary systems, outer space, etc., which are visible to us, is only one half of the complete universe. Before the manifestation takes place, and after the entrance of Vishnu within the universe, there is a period of 1,000 celestial years. All the living entities injected within the womb of the Mahatattva are divided in all universes with the incarnation of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and all of them lie down with the Lord until Brahma is born. Brahma is the first living being within the universe, and from him all other demigods and living creatures are born. Manu is the original father of mankind, and therefore in Sanskrit mankind is called Manusya. Humanity in different bodily qualities is distributed throughout the various planetary systems. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sahagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sarivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gauranki Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripre Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubi Eva Chapatita Nam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunivari Paschati Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yasya Devi Parabhaktir Yata Tevi Tata Guru Tasyate Katita Hirata Prakashante Mahatmanaha. Hiranmaya Sapurusha Sahasra Parivatsaran Andakosha Uvasapsu Sarvasatvo Pabrimhitaha. The gigantic Virat Purusha known as Hiranmaya lived for 1,000 celestial years on the water of the universe, and all the living entities lay with him. So we've been talking about, this chapter is called Creation of the Universal Form. And here in this particular verse, it's speaking actually about Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And it says in the word for word here, which is interesting, it's word Hiranmaya, the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who also assumes the Virat Rupa. So we can understand that this Virat Rupa originates from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, which is the expansion of Vishnu that is laying on the ocean within the waters of each universe. So you can see this Mahavishnu painting back here. There's Mahavishnu, which is the first Purusha avatar, and he is so large that each material universe is emanating from one pore on the skin of his body. And so he lies down on this causal ocean, and from there all these universes are emanating, and then when these universes emanate on his out breath, these universes come out of each pore, and then he expands himself into each and every one of those countless billions or trillions, unthinkable numbers of universes. He expands himself into those as this Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, which is being spoken of here. And then we understand from there, this is explaining here that, of course, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is laying on this ocean, on this water, for 1,000 celestial years. And then after that, Lord Brahma sprouts from the lotus flower on his navel, and Lord Brahma then goes about and conducts the secondary creation. So the original, like the shell, the seed of the universe is created by Mahavishnu, and then from there, all the living entities and all the planets and planetary systems and such is created by Lord Brahma in the secondary creation. So this is obviously kind of complicated, kind of hard to wrap our minds around, the creation of the entire universe. We can't really even wrap our minds around how, something very simple is created, relatively, even just something like this table, like it kind of takes a little bit of expertise in carpentry, right, to be able to make something like this. Nobody that's just never touched a saw or any kind of tools could come up with something that's precisely crafted like this. But of course, the entire universe is so much more complicated. There's so many systems working, and all these planets, all these different living entities, different bodily forms, and it's all working in a harmonious way in terms of everything's within, everything is continuing to exist and is staying together in some way. And it's all very, very complicated, even down to the cellular level. If you look at the atomic level, there's so much complicated things happening on those microscopic levels, and then you look at the macro level, if you look at on the level of the stars and the planetary systems, so much is happening there. It's all very complicated, all these systems, right? So it takes a level of intelligence that is completely unfathomable to us to create such a thing. And so this might seem like not so exciting to learn about. It seems kind of like being in school again, right? An astronomy class, physics class, and it's very boring. But we understand through our acharyas that we should come to the platform of being able to appreciate and actually relish these pastimes of the Lord in terms of the material creation, just as equally as we do in terms of listening to Krishna Leela or reading Krishna Leela or Ram Leela or the different Leelas of the of Krishna himself and his more personal interactions with his devotees and such. So we should be able to understand that this is actually something very important, not only because our acharyas are saying it, but also because the Bhagavatam continues to re-emphasize it and repeat it over and over again. The entire first canto is titled Creation, and then the creation is covered in that canto for some time, and then second canto is also covers aspects of the creation, and now we're all the way to the 6th chapter of the 3rd canto, and we're still talking about creation. So this is obviously, because it continued to be emphasized over and over again, it's something that we should pay attention to, we should actually study and learn. But we can also understand that to actually understand the complications, the details of this universal creation in terms of Vedic cosmology and Vedic creationism is no easy task. It's no simple thing that anyone can just kind of dive into. Actually, it takes a lot of speciality and purposefully studying this. So there's people that are specialized in this, and they study it in more detail, and they can understand things a lot more thoroughly than the average, just so-called average devotee can. But we should still not shy away from it. We shouldn't think, well, I can't understand it, so therefore might as well just not even study it. Might as well just skip ahead and just learn about the pastimes of the Lord and read Nrsimha pastimes, read Krishna pastimes, and these kinds of things. We should scrutinizingly study it and try to understand it to the best of our abilities, whether we're able to fully understand it or not. And, it's just like similarly to, if you're a scientist or, you're studying the scientific theories of the origin of the universe, these are things that a layman can't quite understand, and quantum theory and all these things. It gets very complicated, very complex, and it's something that takes years and years of training and understanding and studying to actually come to a level of familiarity with it, with these scientific theories. So similarly, it's very complex in this case, in terms of Vedic understanding. And I was just kind of thinking about this because we've been, so we're going to be going to this University of Georgia to do some preaching in this coming new year. And one thing I was looking up was just because I was curious. I knew that this was the case, but I just wanted to see like the numbers of it. How many Christians are there? What is the ratio of Christians to like just non-religious people? And it's like 80%, something like that. And so I just wanted to look at, I just was curious because I remembered, from growing up that the Bible, the very beginning of the Bible is where it talks about creation in terms of biblical understanding. It's the very first verse. It talks about God said, "Let there be light," something like that, right? And then, so if you go through, you can literally read the entire biblical understanding of creation within about a minute or so. It's just like the first 29 verses of the Bible. And in that, God just, creates the light, and then he creates the day and the night, and he creates the land, and the water was there, I guess. He created that. And then he created land after that. Then he created plants, animals, and humans. And so it's like over the course of 7 days. And then on the seventh day, he rested. And so it's a very, very basic interpretation or trying to come to a very basic understanding of, he's saying audio went out. Can you maybe replug that in or unplug it or something? He said it went out, so just unplug it. So, Jonathan said his is fine. Okay, all good. So, yes, the biblical understanding is very, very simple and basic. And one thing that creates for them, for Christians, is the ability to say, well, we can fit modern science into our biblical understanding of creation because it's so vague. They can kind of twist modern theories and make it seem like, okay, well, actually, this is what the Bible is saying too, because it's very vague. But you get into these, the Bhagavatam, and it's extremely specific, right? It's extremely specific. There's descriptions of what, the size of Mahavishnu, and that, he has 4 arms, and they're each holding these different paraphernalia, and then from that, these universes are coming, and then there's this expansion of Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu comes in, and then from there, this Kshirodakshaya Vishnu is the, super soul comes and expands even more, and Brahma is the first created living. There's so much detail, and it goes on and on and on in terms of which living entities are created first and what order, and all of this is explained in explicit detail. So it's not so simple to kind of mold it to modern scientific theory. Despite that, people still try to do it, and they try to say, well, you see that, actually this, now the new theory is apparently this big bounce. So there's Big Bang, which is everything, nothing exploded, and then everything came about from that. And now the idea is that, well, the universe is expanding, right? And eventually, because of gravity, that expansion will slow down because everything is pulling each other. It'll slow down, and then it'll kind of reverse, and it'll come back to a singularity, and then that single point will again explode, and it's just this repeating thing. And so they say, oh, well, you see, this actually lines up with Vedic understanding because the universe is emanating from Mahavishnu, and it's coming back in, and then it's coming back out, and in. So it seems like it's, aligning with that, but this is actually a dangerous territory, dangerous grounds to go into, because then, as we all know, within 5 or 10 years, this big bounce theory will be out of fashion. There'll be some new theory. And at that point, someone that spent maybe, you could say, okay, I'm going to write a book about this and how Vedic understanding is the same as big bounce. And actually, science is confirming what we have always understood through Vedic literature. by the time you finish writing that book, the theory will have changed and the current paradigm of science will have changed. So it'll be completely outdated. So it'll have been a waste of time. And you'll have to be, writing another book for the new theory. And so we shouldn't bend and twist our understanding and our interpretations of the Vedic literature based on what is in fashion in modern science. We can, just speculate and just kind of imagine into the future, maybe like 1,000 years, just by, imagining and just remembering what science had 1,000 years ago, the theories that they had and the understandings they had of how the universe came about, what this is all about, physics, everything. And we can see that in 1,000 years, humanity will look back at science now and say that this is, very primitive, very basic understanding. And they'll even laugh at a lot of things like, for example, they used to do these witch trials, and they would basically put a woman in the water, and if she floated, she was a witch, and if she sank, she wasn't a witch. But if she sank, she would also drown. So either way, they killed the poor woman. But so this was their understanding of this is science. If she's floating, then she's a witch. If she's sinking, then she's and now we can look back and say this is so silly, this is so nonsense. And similarly, this is how people will look back upon modern science and give it enough time. This Big Bang theory will be laughed at, and all these different things. So we shouldn't try to twist again our understanding and try to interpret things in order to align with that. And it was kind of spoken about yesterday a little bit, but there's, examples of devotees, back in Prabhupada's time that, left the movement even because of what Prabhupada said specifically about the moon landing being fake, that it didn't happen, that we didn't go to the moon. And because these devotees were so set on believing in modern science, and they had that conditioning to just believe what the scientists say and, believe, okay, maybe they saw this video that, now there's ideas that it's a staged video, but they saw that and they said, well, I'm seeing these people on the moon, and Prabhupada's saying, so they left because of that. They lost their faith. But we shouldn't fall into this trap, because we should, first of all, understand our background in terms of our conditioning, where we're coming from, that we were sent through this school system for however many years. If you went to college, then it was 16 years of school, 17 years of schooling. If you're not, it's 13 years. And for these entire, almost 2 decades of our life, we're told science is this way, this is what the theory is, this is what the conclusion of science is, this is a fact. And they're actually very expert at making it seem like this is how it really is, right? They tell you in school that Big Bang is how it is, and now we know that that's kind of out of date, but they don't catch up to the modern understanding in time. So they might still be teaching for sure, they're still teaching so many outdated things in science classes in schools now, because the scientists that are on the cutting edge have discovered new things that invalidate things that are being taught in the textbooks, but the textbooks are still there, and they have to print new textbooks, write new textbooks, retrain the teachers, all these different things. So therefore, the kids are actually being taught outdated science, and they're being taught it as though it is factual, reality, that this is the final conclusion of science. This is it. This is the end-all, be-all of reality. But there's this nice anecdote that my Guru Maharaj gives, that he once was speaking to an astrophysicist. I don't know if you've heard this, and he asked them how many theories. He was just curious, how many theories are there on the origin of the universe? Different ideas of how this universe came about. And this person said, over 2,000. Over 2,000. And then Maharaj was like, well, there can't be much more than 2,000 astrophysicists in the world, right? And she's like, yeah, there's not. No, actually, many of them have multiple theories. So everyone has their own little idea. But then, again, one kind of theory, one idea is put on a pedestal and presented to humanity, presented to society and all the culture as this is the fact, this is how it is, Big Bang, right? And from there, they're very expert at actually making it seem like they know the truth, they know this is real. But if you just kind of peek behind the curtain and see, they all have their own ideas. They all have completely different conflicting ideas and theories. And even Stephen Hawking, there's another story that he, he's kind of like seen as like the top guru of science and like astrology or astronomy for such a long time, right? His whole life. And then at the end of his life, I heard that he said, actually, I realized that I figured out that what I did, like what I propagated, I was wrong, actually. There's a flaw in my logic. There's a flaw in my theory. And so all of that, is just completely thrown out. And this is kind of just the situation on and on and on in science. So again, we shouldn't try to twist our understanding to fit within that and see how, actually what the Srimad Bhagavatam is saying is exactly what modern science is saying. No, because then, again, it'll change. And we should understand our conditioning and understand that we have to come out of that conditioning of accepting everything that science says as fact and try to question things and actually see, okay, well, does it actually make sense? And of course, we understand, too, that science is taking everything from the level of pratyaksha and anuman, so the inference and sense perception, right? So they're taking all of their knowledge. There's different ways to acquire knowledge, right? So through your senses, through inference and logic, and then through a bona fide source of knowledge, right? And so a higher source of knowledge. And so science is completely based on these first two. They're just completely basing everything on their sense perception and on logic and reasoning and inference. And they don't have any kind of process for accepting a higher source of knowledge. They don't have any scope for that because they can't observe it with their own senses, right? But there's so many things we can't observe with our own senses. I mean, the eyes can only see, if you remember in a science class, they showed you the visible light spectrum and then all the light spectrum, and it's just a tiny little sliver, right? Tiny little sliver. And our ears can only hear so much frequencies. Dogs can hear a wider range of frequencies than us. And so many, our senses are completely limited. We can't actually see so many things. None of us have actually seen an atom, but we kind of accept that that's there. And of course, the Bhagavatam talks about that too. But we just have to understand that we're taking so many things that science says on faith as well. We're just kind of believing them on faith. Okay, we've never seen evolution happen in front of us, but most people just kind of accept that that's how it is on faith. So there's such a level of faith when it comes to accepting science that people don't acknowledge. They think, oh, well, these religious people, they're just blind faith. They're just kind of like silly. They're not thinking logically, but they're doing the exact same thing that they claim that we're doing. And so when it comes to understanding this Vedic cosmology and Vedic creationism, we can't simply just kind of cherry pick what we like out of the Bhagavatam and out of Krishna consciousness, that whatever will suit our own needs and whatever kind of aligns with our idea of the world, with our understanding of the world, and discard what doesn't. There's this, I think, Koki Prabhu was saying that, right? That, the spiritual teachings of the Bhagavatam, I accept that, but the material teachings might not be so accurate. This is actually rascaldom. This is nonsense. This is the same logic as, again, taking this chicken analogy, trying to cut a chicken in half and say, I don't want to feed the mouth of the chicken anymore, it's costing me too much money, but I want to keep the eggs. It doesn't work. You have to have the whole thing. You have to accept the whole thing. I mean, there's so many things that are completely inconceivable within the Bhagavatam, right? Like just this idea of a lotus flower stemming from the navel of Vishnu, and then from that, Brahma is born, the first living entity within the universe. His body is made of intelligence. We can't conceive of how that works. And then, from between his eyes comes Shiva, Rudra comes out, and from his thumb comes Daksha, and out of his nose, Lord Varaha comes, and all these different. And it doesn't make any sense, like from like just logical thinking, like rational, modern person, right? It doesn't make any sense to us, but we have to accept it. We have to accept that this is how it is, because this is what the Bhagavatam is saying. And this is a higher source of knowledge. And we shouldn't have just complete blind faith, but we can understand that this is a bona fide source of knowledge in our own lives, because we're reading these books, we're practicing what it's explaining, we're practicing this process of Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a spiritual master, under the guidance of devotees, and we're engaging in these different aspects of devotional service. And through that, we are clearly seeing a result in our own lives. Otherwise, we wouldn't be participating in this, right? And so, because of that, we can see other things, like dehi no sminyata dehe kamaram yavanam jara. We can see very practically that, okay, like I used to be in the body of a young baby, and then I was a boy, and then I was, adolescent. Now I'm 30 years old, and then someday I'll be 60 maybe if I get that far, and then eventually this body will die. But I can understand that I'm the same person through all that. It's very easily perceived, right? We can see that we are the same person. We haven't changed into a different person all of a sudden. And other aspects, that the uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. The controlled mind is the greatest friend. We can see this practically in our lives, right? We can experience when the mind is under control, that it's being directed towards Krishna service, and it's a very nice tool to have. And when it's not, it's causing us great suffering. So we can see so many different ways that the Vedic literature and the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita are directly benefiting us, and are, we can test different things that are said in the Bhagavad Gita for ourselves practically. But some things we just have to take on faith. Some things we just have to accept, that Brahma is the first created living entity in the universe, that all these, expansions of Vishnu, and they're lying in the ocean, and the material universes are emanating from the pores of his body. It's really completely inconceivable, it's something that we can't directly perceive with our senses. So we just have to take it on the basis of authority of the Shastra. And so ultimately we have to take something as authority. We have to take something as authoritative. Either we take these scientists that are constantly changing their minds, changing their theories as authority, or we take this timeless knowledge from the Bhagavatam as authority, or we can, take something like the Bible or something, but again, it doesn't go into so much detail, so it's not so compelling. But, the other thing that I kind of thought about is that, these scientists, they have all these theories and all these things, but actually it's said, there's this quote, what is this? I'm paraphrasing, but basically it's saying that science progresses a little bit at a time with each death in society. As every person dies, science progresses a little bit more. Because basically the old guard, those that are ingrained within the system of science, right, they come up with their theories and they have their ideas, and then throughout life they kind of stick with that theory, and even if evidence comes up against that theory, they many times will reject it just on the basis of attachment to their own theories, their own ideas. And so, eventually it takes for them to actually, they have to die, and then the new people come in that have, found this new theory, and then they, again, stick to their theory. So it's a long process, it's a slow process, and it's very much heavily based on this faith. But we understand that true science, actually the real understanding of science, is that you're taking everything from the basis of, it's called first principles. So like, you're not, you don't take anything as factual. You actually question everything from like the beginning. Even, you don't say, okay, just because this theory has been around, we're going to accept that. They take everything back to this level of first principles that say, well, is this actually the real truth? And so they investigate things, and they experiment, and they test things out and see if it's factual or not. So similarly, we are explaining that we have a process of spiritual science, a scientific approach to spirituality, where you can actually come and experiment and test this out, test out the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, test out the process of devotional service for yourself, and do it like a scientific experiment. You can try it out. See if, associating with devotees and chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and taking only prasadam and cutting out these four sinful activities, see if this actually benefits your life, and if actually you're feeling more and more freedom from material desires. And everyone that's engaged in it can clearly understand and acknowledge that this is the fact. This is how it is. This is actually really working to alleviate us from these pangs of material existence. So again, a true scientist would welcome this, and they would come and they would actually try these things out for themselves, and they would say, okay, let's let's do an experiment and see if this is really true. And we would happily do it, and they would definitely conclude that this is a bona fide process to achieve the goal that we're proclaiming, the goal of achieving love of God and the goal of completely surrendering to the Lord and directing all of our activities towards Him and freeing ourselves of material desire. So why not investigate that scientifically? Ultimately they're stuck in their ways. There's of course this example of Juta Karma Prabhu, the Prabhupada disciple who was here for the Shravan Kirtanam camp, and his life's work is working within the scientific field to his main book that he created is Forbidden Archaeology, to disprove this idea that humanity has only been around for, I don't know what the current theory is, maybe a couple 100,000 years or something like that. And so he spent years and years, decades, I think, just investigating and writing this book, and he traveled all over the world and found so much evidence for humanity existing millions of years ago, actually. And they found these different footprints and fossilized footprints and things like that, and he was explaining how because they're so set in their ways, they're so averse to accepting a new theory, accepting a new idea that kind of shatters their current understanding, they're able to twist things in a way that they saw these footprints that are very clearly of a human, and they're able to basically come to the conclusion that it was a human-like being, like an ape kind of thing, but it was walking in such a strange way that its foot was bent in some way. And it was so many footsteps, right? They were all the same, but it was saying that basically it was just they twist things in such a way that, it could have been like this and that. And they twist it in a way that, again, aligns with their understanding. And so he's been, going around to colleges and speaking and explaining these things. And for many of the, places he's gone, and many people in academia reject what he's saying, and they just kind of ignore him and think that he's a quack, so to speak, that he's making things up or whatever. But he has very robust scientific evidence to prove his claims. So again, this is a very strong example of how scientists are more or less very dogmatic, very set in their ways in many cases, and these values, these ideals that they claim to uphold of neutrality, of detachment from a certain set of beliefs, all these things, is actually a bit of an illusion. There's this other example of Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia, and he did all these investigations, and we actually use this in our college preaching, and we're going to try to use it more and more and try to understand it more and more. But he did this whole investigations. He wasn't a devotee or anything, but he somehow got into this investigation of reincarnation. And he came and discovered actually thousands of cases of young children, just very young, maybe 3 or 4 years old, just being able to speak and stuff like that, remembering many details of a past life, and a lot of times it happened to be, it seems like it happens more when the past life ended in a traumatic way or a violent way or something very quickly. And so they would remember, the village that they were in, the family that they had, the names of the family members, details of their lives that couldn't possibly be understood. And this is when the child is 3 or 4. They have basically, they're just starting to even understand what the world is, they can't understand who they can't possibly have been implanted with these different things. And okay, if it happens once or twice, it's okay, maybe that's a fluke, but it happens thousands of times. He's able to find so many cases. Another interesting one is that they find birthmarks. For example, they had someone that had a bunch of speckled birthmarks on their chest, and then they found, and this person was saying, I remember in my past life I was killed in this way, blah, 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 I was shot. And they found the case of this person that was shot by a shotgun in the chest. And the wound, the gunshot wound, matched with the birthmarks on the chest of the new kid. So there's so many things. Actually, there's multiple cases like this. And yeah, so he went and he found thousands of cases where he investigated the claims, and he went to the previous family and he confirmed those things, and he did it in a very scientific way, right? And again, thousands of cases. And then when he presented it, it was immediately just dismissed. Oh, this is not scientific. Whatever kind of technicalities they can come up with to kind of dismiss it, because it doesn't align with the current paradigm that life comes from matter, that they don't have any conception of the spirit soul that can transmigrate from body to body. So even if we do come up with some very compelling evidence, very compelling science within the paradigm of science to kind of affirm our understanding from the Bhagavatam, and to reaffirm that and show, hey, look, what these books are saying is actually fact, and you can see it through science. A lot of time, it's definitely important to do. Prabhupada wanted us to do that, but we see a lot of time the current scientific paradigm, the current guard of science, rejects it and doesn't actually approach it in such a scientific way. And so this verse, it's really emphasizing, another aspect of it, and I'll kind of finish up here. It's really emphasizing, for me at least, what sticks out is that Krishna is really the center of everything. He's the center of the whole universe. All the universes are emanating from him, from Mahavishnu, and then the first being within the universe is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then from him Brahma is coming. So he's really like the origin and the center of all of everything. He's the origin and dissolution, he says, of know that for everything material and spiritual, I am the origin and dissolution of both, he says to Arjuna. And so this is a good meditation, I think, for when we're thinking about this universal form and we're thinking about these the creation of the universe. It's all coming from Krishna, and we can understand that what we are is just some tiny little insignificant being that's in some tiny little planet, in one universe out of countless universes, and we are still stuck on the idea of thinking about what I want, what are my problems in life, how can I enjoy all these different things, when it's very clear that Krishna is the center of everything. He's completely the center of all activities. He's the center of, he should be the center of our consciousness. And in that way, we'll actually find real happiness. It's just like we're trying to live, underwater and breathe underwater or something, and we should just come up for air and change our mindset from this self-centered approach to the understanding that Krishna is the center. And through that, we'll actually, find real happiness and actually come back to our constitutional position. One thing my spiritual master said, that this is one life out of millions of lives, and these are all these millions of lives are happening within one breath of Mahavishnu. So it can really show us how insignificant we are. If we're ever feeling puffed up, we can meditate on that. And then one last thing, when I went home for Christmas, my parents were asking, do you celebrate birthdays and this kind of thing? I was like, no. And they're like, well, what do you celebrate? I was like, well, we celebrate Krishna's appearance day, his birthday. And they're like, well, why do you do that? Like, why don't you celebrate your birthday? And it's very simple, the materialists, they can't understand that, Krishna is the center of everything. As I say, Krishna is the center of everything. His appearance day is to be glorified because he comes to deliver us from this blazing forest fire of material existence. And our appearance day just means that we've accepted another material body for our own enjoyment. So it's not actually such a glorious thing. And we're also means that we're one year closer to death. It's really not a birthday, it's more of a death day, as my spiritual master says. Krishna is the center of everything, and we should meditate upon that while we're reading through this understanding of the creation of the universal form. And if there's any comments, questions, please feel free to ask. I saw Vishnu Chittaprabhu has something. If you could call him. I could call him, I guess.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Pranam. You had a comment?
Prabhu.
Question?
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of something now. You can take other comments right now. So
Okay.
if there's time, I'll call it back.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Okay.
I was just wondering how a birthmark gives proof for a past life of somebody with like a correlation with the gunshot, and it sounds like it could be a speculation.
Yeah, sure. So it's not necessarily proof in itself, but it's paired with the fact that this child is exhibiting the same symptoms of saying, I remember this past life, I was this person, my name was this is my mother, my father, my wife, blah, blah, blah. I was killed in this way, I was living in this town. They come up with all these details, again, at the age of 3 or 4. They have all of these details, and then they go check those things. And then, again, the birthmark is just kind of like an extra little, like, sprinkle on top of, like, okay, like, look at, even that is there, the birthmark of the wound. And there's multiple different cases. It's not just like one-off cases. There's a whole book of this birthmarks, and it's called like biology and reincarnation or something like that. And so yeah, it's not necessarily proof in itself. And that's the thing that people say, well, you can't actually prove that this is how it is, but so much circumstantial evidence, it has to mean something. Like they say, well, it's not scientific proof, because the thing is, you can't use material science to prove like something spiritual, that the soul is migrating from body to body, right? You can't, because you can't see that soul going. So therefore, they just dismiss it all. But there's got to be something there. I mean, it's pretty compelling, at least I think, and many people think that too. But yeah. Okay, let's see. I guess he'll call back, but it's 8:30. I'm supposed to end at 8:30 now? Yeah, okay. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.